Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're pivoting a bit, taking a really close look, uh, not at huge global trends, but more at microecological impacts. We're focusing on something we're calling reef-safe life.
That's right.
Our mission really is to connect the dots for you, show how some of the most, basic things you do every day, your personal care routine, the sunscreen you grab, how that directly links to the health, even the survival of marine ecosystems globally.
Yeah, and we've been digging into a pretty comprehensive discussion guide. It focuses on sort of three main areas: chemical sunscreens, your everyday body care stuff, and then this persistent issue of microplastics.
Okay?
And the aim isn't just to, rehash the problem, but to link these things together, give you a quick, practical, but also a really solid understanding of the whole challenge.
And it's a challenge, all right. It seems like there's this direct line, almost from, say, your bathroom drain right out to the world's coral reefs, fragile places.
It's measurable.
We want to trace that line today and, importantly, talk about how making informed choices might actually, break that connection.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into it. The core idea that kept coming up in the material, it's quite compelling, actually.
Mm-hmm.
The sort of ecological principle that says, what we do for ourselves, for our own health, beauty, protection, it just shouldn't harm the ocean's health.
It sounds simple, doesn't it? Like a mantra.
Yeah. But then you look at an ingredients list, and it gets practical fast.
Exactly. And when you try to define what reef-safe life actually covers, you see how tangled the pollution pathway is. It's not just about, someone slathering on sunscreen and jumping in the ocean on vacation.
Right, not just tourists.
No, it's about these persistent pollutants entering the system constantly, daily. We're talking chemical stressors, things like UV filters from sunscreen, but also detergents in soaps, shampoos.
Everyday stuff?
Everyday stuff. And then there's the physical stress from microplastic pollution. It's like a combined assault on marine life.
That really sets the scene. So maybe let's start with the one people hear about most. Sunscreen. This is where it gets really interesting, you said, because the chemistry that protects us seems to be, fundamentally at odds with coral biology.
It often is, yeah.
So what is it? What makes certain common sunscreen chemicals so damaging?
Well, it mostly comes down to specific chemical filters. You hear names like oxybenzone, octinoxate thrown around a lot.
Yeah.
These chemicals are great at absorbing UV radiation. That's their job. But unfortunately, they're also known toxins to the tiny algae, the zooxanthellae, that live inside coral tissue. They're symbiotic.
The ones that give coral its color.
Exactly, and its food. So when the coral absorbs these sunscreen chemicals, the filters basically stress out the algae and the coral expels them.
And that expulsion, that's bleaching, right?
That's coral bleaching. It strips the coral of its main food source, its color. It's essentially starving unless conditions improve, like right away.
Okay, so that's the mechanism. But you mentioned something surprising about this earlier.
Yes, and this really highlights the scale of the issue. It's the potency of these ingredients. We can't just assume the ocean's vastness will dilute them enough.
How potent are we talking?
Research keeps showing that certain UV filters, oxybenzone is a key one here, can actually trigger viral infections in corals. They can cause genetic damage, and they speed up bleaching even when they're present in incredibly tiny concentrations. We're talking down to 1 part per trillion.
Wait, 1 part per trillion? That's hard to even imagine. What does that look like? Can you give us a sense of that scale?
Okay, think of it like this. 1 part per trillion is like taking a single drop of something and mixing it evenly into about 6 Olympic-sized swimming pools.
Wow. Okay.
Now, picture a busy beach destination. Millions of people swimming, showering, maybe snorkeling all year round. That constant, tiny chemical input adds up. It creates biologically active doses in that local area, putting constant stress on the coral.
So the cumulative effect, especially in maybe enclosed bays or lagoons where tourists gather, it could be really significant.
Absolutely alarming.
And do these chemicals break down quickly once they're in the water? Or do they hang around?
That's another part of the problem, not quickly enough. Some might degrade with sunlight, sure, but the sheer volume being added means they're basically always present. And they tend to be lipophilic, they like fats, so they can build up in organisms.
Accumulate in the food chain?
Potentially, yes. They're persistent enough to cause real localized damage where human activity is high.
Okay, that makes the sunscreen issue very clear.
Yeah.
But as you said, sunscreen is maybe intermittent for many people. The rest of our routine, shampoos, body washes, scrubs, makeup, that's daily. How does all that fit into this reef-safe idea?
Right, and this is where the conversation shifts a bit. We move from that immediate chemical toxicity we see with some sunscreens to a problem of persistent material pollution, specifically microplastics.
Okay.
It's perhaps less instantly deadly to an organism, but it's much, much more pervasive.
And when we say microplastics here, are we just talking about, like, plastic bags breaking down into smaller bits over decades?
That's secondary microplastics. What we're focusing on here, based on the source material, are primary microplastics. These are different.
How so?
These are plastic particles, often polyethylene, polypropylene, things like that, that are manufactured to be tiny from the start, usually less than 5 millimeters. They're intentionally put into products.
Intentionally. Like what?
Think exfoliating scrubs with those little beads, some toothpastes, maybe makeup with glitter. They're added for texture or bulk or just shimmer. And because they're designed to be tiny, well, that makes them really hard to deal with.
What do you mean?
Well, once they go down the drain, your standard wastewater treatment plant just isn't equipped to filter out things that small with perfect efficiency.
Okay.
Yeah, studies show the effectiveness varies a lot, but plants often miss somewhere between, say, 15% and maybe even 40% of the microplastics that flow in.
So every time someone uses certain face scrubs or glittery products, we're essentially flushing tiny, non-biodegradable plastic bits straight into the waterways.
Pretty much, yes. And these plastics, even if they don't leach harmful chemicals themselves, though some might, they cause physical problems. Marine life eats them, it can block their gut.
Right.
And crucially, they also act like tiny sponges. They can soak up other chemical pollutants already in the seawater, concentrating them. Then, if something eats that plastic, it gets a dose of those concentrated pollutants too, potentially moving up the food chain.
So it raises a real question about why we use these plastic exfoliants or fillers when, natural alternatives like salt or sugar scrubs have always been around.
Exactly. It highlights the interconnectedness. You've got potent chemicals from one source, persistent plastics from another, all ending up in the same place, the marine environment.
Okay, so the problem is definitely complex, chemical, physical. But what can people actually do? We've laid out the issues. The good news, you said, is the source material gives clear, actionable steps.
Yes, absolutely. Moving from understanding the problem to practical solutions. And the power really shifts to the listener here, to you as the consumer. It boils down to reading labels and choosing alternatives.
Okay.
We can basically outline 3 immediate changes, which translate directly into swapping out certain types of products.
What's the first swap?
First one, ditch the chemical UV filters. This means actively reading sunscreen labels. You want to switch away from ingredients like oxybenzone, octinoxate, afavobenzone, those chemical absorbers,
And switch to what?
to mineral-based alternatives.
Yeah.
Specifically, look for non-nano zinc oxide and non-nano titanium dioxide.
Okay, mineral sunscreens. We hear they're better, and the idea of a physical barrier on the skin makes sense. Feels safer than something absorbed. But aren't they known for being thick, chalky, hard to rub in? Is that trade-off getting better? And how easy is it to find those non-nano versions?
That's definitely the practical hurdle people often mention. And you're right, historically they could be quite chalky, but the formulations are improving significantly. But you do need to be aware, and that non-nano part is really important. It means the mineral particles are large enough, generally over 100 nanometers, that they don't tend to dissolve or get easily absorbed by marine organisms, or, for that matter, by human skin.
So particle size matters. Needs to be transparent on the label, ideally.
Ideally, yes.
Sure.
Good companies are getting better at stating that.
Yeah. Okay, so that's swap number 1. Check sunscreen ingredients. Go for non-nano mineral. What's a second big change?
Second change targets those microplastics we talked about. Eliminate products with plastic particulates.
So check the labels again.
Exactly. Avoid anything scrubs, washes, makeup that lists polyethylene, polypropylene, polyethylene terephthalate, PET, polymethyl methacrylate, PMMA, or nylon. Those are common plastic microbeads or glitters.
And look for.
Look for natural exfoliants instead. Things like salt, sugar, ground coffee, ground nutshells, seeds. There are lots of effective natural options that just biodegrade. This directly cuts down on that primary plastic pollution.
Makes sense, but here's something tricky. We see reef-safe or ocean-friendly slapped on labels all the time now. Is that actually regulated? How do you avoid just, greenwashing?
That is a really vital point. Reef-Safe is not a legally defined or regulated term, unfortunately.
Ah,
So the consumer basically has to act as the regulator. You need to rely less on those front-of-pack marketing claims and more on actually flipping the bottle over and checking the ingredient list yourself.
look for the absence of those specific chemicals, like oxybenzone.
Yes, check for the absence of oxybenzone, octinoxate, and those plastic polymers we mentioned. A truly responsible brand will usually be quite transparent, maybe have third-party certifications, or clearly state on the packaging which specific harmful ingredients they don't use.
Be a skeptical label reader. Okay, what's the third actionable change?
The third one broadens the scope a bit, thinking about the whole life cycle. Opt for products with biodegradable ingredients and minimal sustainable packaging.
Okay, explain that a bit more.
Well, even if the product formula itself is reef-friendly, if it comes in excessive virgin plastic packaging, that still contributes to the overall environmental burden, right?
True, the plastic waste issue.
Exactly. So look for brands using recycled materials, like post-consumer recycled plastic. Or even better, consider switching to solid product formats. Things like shampoo bars, conditioner bars, solid soap bars.
Like the ones becoming more popular now.
Yeah, they drastically cut down on packaging waste altogether, and they often mean less water in the product, so they're lighter to ship too. It's about minimizing the entire footprint.
That's a great roadmap. 3 clear changes. Rethinking sunscreen filters, ditching plastic bits, and choosing better packaging. It feels achievable.
It is.
And it really drives home that idea, doesn't it? That maybe we don't need perfection from everyone, but if millions of us just make these few consistent swaps.
The cumulative positive effect could be massive. Small changes scaled up.
Okay, so let's wrap this deep dive up. We started just being curious about this reef-safe life idea, and we've traced the connections, the chemical links, the material links between our personal pair choices and, well, the actual health of coral reefs around the world. It really does put a certain weight on what we choose to buy.
It absolutely does. And if you're looking for maybe a simple guiding thought to take away from all this, something to frame your choices moving forward, the source material ended with a kind of mantra for the movement.
What's that?
It's simple, but powerful. What heals me must not harm the sea.